Hey guys, Dr. Shook here, and it's another sauna session as you can see. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is I want to share with you some things that you may not know about laboratory testing and laboratory values. Because, a lot of people, we go to our doctors and we think that we're going there to get healthy. I mean, that's a lot of times what's going on in our head, to get better. Typically people don't go to the doctor unless there's a problem. More and more people are getting like routine checkups, but really what are those, right? What are routine checkups? They're just, let's see if we can detect a disease process before it gets to more of an advanced stage, right? But question something for me. Is any of that about optimizing health? Let's get you as healthy as we possibly can. Let's put together strategies to help you detect any kind of problems or shifts in your body's chemistry that may not be ideal. And let's work on identifying if there's low-grade inflammation, if there's vitamin or nutrient deficiencies, if there's blood sugar dysregulation, if there are hormonal imbalances that we might be able to optimize. Is any of that considered? No, it's not. And why not? Why not? I mean, that's what I want. Think about it for a second. Like, what do you want? What do you want for healthcare? What do you want? What do you want out of going to your doctor? Do you just want them to detect diseases? Because here's what they do, right? Not that that's not a valuable thing, right? Thank goodness we have that. But let's consider some things here. Our healthcare system is really structured and it revolves around the detection and treatment of diseases, right? It's not about getting you healthy or optimizing your health. Really, these routine, yearly checkups are just to make sure that a disease process hasn't started yet. And if there's something that's recurring, that's a problem, that tends to be a problem, on subsequent wellness checks or whatever you want to call them every 6 months to a year, then your doctor says, well, this is a problem. Your cholesterol's high, so you need to change your diet, you need to exercise more, and you need to take this medication, like a statin, right? But nothing is really focused on why is this problem happening. And to say that, with the cholesterol issue, for example, that diet and exercise is the end-all be-all for cholesterol is absurd. It's really, there's so many other things that factor into that. And that's just one example of kind of our healthcare system. It's structured around treating diseases, not optimizing health. And I think everyone knows that because you go and you get a medication for whatever your problem is. But a medication, think about this for a second. Is a medication designed to is it really designed to get your body working as healthy as possible, or is it more of a stopgap, a thing to try to help support you while you're sick? Right? I mean, how many people get started on a medication and the doctor's like, well, hey, we're going to start you on this medication, but what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're going to put together this plan because of these are the things that are driving and causing this process that's requiring you, or this is the reason I think why you need to be on this medication. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on all those things, and we're going to put together a plan to work on those things so that you don't have to be on this medication long term. Said no doctor ever. Right? Said no doctor ever. And really the reason for that, and of course I'm sure there's doctors that think that way. I mean, that is the only way I think, right? That's the only way that I really focus on thinking about healthcare and on health, and that is optimizing health. So let me talk about what I intended. I mean, I can get into this long discussion about the problems in healthcare right now, and they're numerous. There are many, and it's ridiculous. There are a lot of outside interests. There's a lot of money that's involved, big money, big business, and to get any kind of change within healthcare that supports the kind of things that I'm talking about, right? Like optimizing health. I think long term, we can be sure that long-term focusing on prevention is going to be the key. I mean, right now, just for example, diabetes is slated to bankrupt the United States. It is one of these things that is such a huge problem by itself with no other conditions. We're not talking about any other conditions. Diabetes would bankrupt the healthcare system, okay? You know what the other epidemic is? Or there's multiple. With the aging population, the baby boomers, right? As this population continues to age, we're facing an epidemic with actually neurodegenerative conditions, brain, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, right? All these things that are neurodegenerative. And you know what? When we start looking at what drives a lot of these processes, the most underlying theme is inflammation, right? It's this inflammatory process that tends to promote, and there's more, it's more complex than that for sure. But we find that if we're going to have an underlying theme, it's going to be an inflammatory process. Like we know, for example, did you know that in the scientific literature, if you go to PubMed, PubMed.gov, which is like this clearinghouse for most of the peer-reviewed scientific literature, scientific research, which is considered to be of higher quality. And I could go into all kinds of things about the problems with the peer review process. We think that and this idea that you have to have a randomized controlled study is there's all kinds of problems. There's fraud. There are so many things with the research community that there are problems. But I'll digress, right? There's everything I talk about here I could expand on. But so the main thing here is, to not digress further, is that our healthcare system is not set up and not designed to focus on getting you healthy. It's focused on identifying disease processes and then managing them. And by managing them, it's like, hey, can we improve this person's quality of life with the medication? Can we slow this disease process so they can live longer, right? Noble things, but I want to live a vibrant life if possible. That's what I want. That's what everyone wants. They want to be able to live life with full function, not just barely hang on, right? And a lot of people feel like they're barely hanging on. There's a lot of people that are barely hanging on. And thank goodness that we have a lot of the tools that we have for medications and these other interventions, but we have to start changing the focus of healthcare, because for one, the current system is going to bankrupt the entire U.S., right? We're going to bankrupt the entire United States just on things like blood sugar and like, for example, diabetes, and then these neurodegenerative conditions. And where I was going with the last thought process was, my previous comment was that Alzheimer's, if you go to PubMed.gov and you type in type 3 diabetes, guess what you're going to come across? Alzheimer's. That's right. So as far as the pathophysiology, or how the disease process in Alzheimer's, one of the mechanisms behind it is this loss of localized blood sugar regulation. So, and what we think we're going to see is this. So there's actually 5 types of diabetes. Type 1, which is typically juvenile, it's where the immune system, it's autoimmune. It's where the immune system attacks the beta cells of the pancreas, and the pancreas cannot produce insulin. Right? Type 1 diabetic, they require insulin. Type 2 diabetes is typically adult onset. It looks like someone in their 30s to 40s to 50s. It can happen. It's happening earlier. Like our kids now, is it like 1 in 2? Don't quote me on that exactly, but it's a very startling statistic that of our children, like I think something like 1 in 2 are going to they're projecting they're going to develop diabetes, which you already know is this huge epidemic already, and it's going to be much, much worse if these statistics hold true and we don't change our focus. So there's 5 types of diabetes. There's this type 2, which is typically adult onset with obesity. It causes your blood sugar stays higher, your insulin's higher, so you develop insulin resistance. You gradually go through like things like medications like for example, like metformin, that help you with your utilization of your blood sugar, and then you progress to a point where a lot of people have to be put on insulin, and people are told that diabetes is progressive, and so those are 2 types. There's also type 3, which we just mentioned, which is Alzheimer's, which is not the only mechanism that we think drives that. Okay, so I just want to clarify that, but it's being referred to in the scientific literature a lot as type 3 diabetes, and you can go verify that for yourself. Just go to PubMed.gov, type in type 3 diabetes, and you're going to see all kinds of stuff on Alzheimer's. Okay, that's the 3rd type. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about a 4th type, which is gestational, typically with pregnancy, right? So everyone's heard of that. But what's the 5th type? It's a type that whenever you have Hashimoto's, we're a lot more concerned about, right? It's actually expansion of the autoimmunity. It's an autoimmune type, and what it does is it's typically adult onset. It looks like it would be type 2 diabetes with obesity, high blood sugar, higher insulin levels. But what happens is that the immune system starts attacking the beta cells of the pancreas that produce your insulin. And so it's kind of like an onset of type 1 later in life. So it's like the autoimmunity expands and it happens later in life, and they're calling that 1.5. So it looks like type 2. It's typically adult onset. You'll start seeing people having fluctuations in their blood sugar, and that will occur. So there's these 5 different types of diabetes. Just to illustrate the point, We got to change what we do. That's why, like, the stuff that I'm teaching you guys is to try to empower you to, with knowledge, to say, you know what, I have the ability to be healthy. My body was made, and it's always working to self-preservation. It's always working to heal itself. If I cut my hand, it will heal on its own, right? It will scab, it will stop bleeding, the scab will fall off, and it will heal all on its own, because the body's always working to self-preserve in every process. So if we can just respect that and think, come from that place, right? Come from that place of, okay, I'm going to work with my body instead of trying to force physiology on it. Now, I'm going to be respectful of that and say, well, what's causing my body, if it's not functioning optimally, to dysfunction, right? Why am I getting sick? How can I work with it? And that's what we would try to investigate. Like, that's what I try to help people investigate. We can do testing depending on what's going on. And so we've learned, the scientific approach that I utilize is, it really looks at these drivers of disease processes, and it looks at, we start with labs that are very expanded labs. So we look at inflammation, we look at red blood cell health, and if you're anemic, or a shift in your chemistry towards anemia. We look at blood sugar, we look at liver enzymes, we look at the gut health, we look at adrenal gland health. We want to consider the thyroid. Can the thyroid physiology, is it optimal from beginning to end? What's happening with your vitamin D status and nutrient and minerals? All these things, right? Or do you have environmental toxicities? Is your immune system reacting to environmental chemicals? Do you have parasites? Do you have yeast overgrowth? Do you have some kind of exposure environmentally that's causing problems? We want to consider the whole person. Were you born cesarean? Did you take a lot of rounds of antibiotics when you were younger? What was your diet like when you were growing up? The full health history is important, because even so what was your mother's nutrition like when she was carrying you before you were delivered? What was her health status like? Did she smoke all the time? What occurred? Did she drink alcohol? What are all these things that could have weakened your constitution so that you develop a disease process? That gives us insight into some of the mechanisms behind what might be pushing your problems. So this difference is that our current healthcare systems focus completely on identifying disease processes and treating a disease process. The approach that I take is focused on looking at the person's health, and if they're in a state of declined health, if they're autoimmune, if they have thyroid related symptoms, and they have all these problems, then we try to very thoroughly cast a very wide net, so that we can look at multiple points or multiple pieces of their physiology, their body chemistry, so that we can work to kind of untangle this thing and try to help them get healthier and just get their health back as much as possible. So that's really the difference, and that's where we have to go. Because if you consider this, for example, so if I've worked with lots of type 2 diabetics. A lot of people, no one comes into my office, or there's no one that I work with from a distance consulting, my distance consulting practice, or if they come into the office, that has one problem. So most people come to see me because they know me for thyroid physiology and for working with Hashimoto's and autoimmunity. That's the primary reason that I see people. But they come in and they have Hashimoto's, and they have gut digestive issues, and they have hormonal problems, and they have diabetes, and so it's this web of problems that I'm trying to untangle and pull the pieces, just get it, look at the picture more clearly, and then try to come up with a plan to help them work on restoring and improving their health. So we can utilize testing and things to help us determine that. But here's the thing: you could spend a few $1,000s on working someone up this way. Okay, like our healthcare system. Let's talk about like insurance, for example, which considers the healthcare perspective that I'm talking to you guys about as not medically necessary. So your insurance company has guidelines. These guidelines are called best practice guidelines. They're put together by an expert panel of doctors who are typically completely medically based. They utilize research to help formulate these plans. In most cases, they're dependent upon what's taught in medical schools, which is typically this approach of detecting disease and treating it with a medication, right? Not looking at the underlying drivers of the process, not using nutrition, not using, diet, temporary supplementations, lifestyle, none of that. So these guidelines are set up, they're best practices. If your doctor credentials or gets in network with those insurance companies, then they agree to, what they're doing is they're agreeing to the terms set forth. And there's usually a packet this thick of legalese. It's basically saying you agree to their guidelines. If you don't follow their guidelines, then they can kick you out of the network, or that they can come back and they can take legal action against you, basically. So your doctors are actually agreeing to practice a certain way in a lot of cases. And so here's what happens. the insurance companies, like, listen, you kind of talk about this and it sounds like, well, there's a conspiracy theory. There's not. I don't believe there's a conspiracy theory. I think that everyone is trying to help you. There are plenty of people in insurance companies that have sick families and that are sick themselves and that want to be healthy. Right? It's the system and how it's evolved to where it is. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. Same thing with your doctors. Your doctors care about you. Believe me, they did not get into healthcare for what they're experiencing now, okay? They did not. And what I mean by that is they didn't get into healthcare to experience all the stress and things that they're getting from insurance and all these other places. No, they got into it to help people. That's what happened. They got into it to help people. And now it's evolved and morphed into this thing that's absolutely unbelievable. So these best practice guidelines are developed, and then what they do is they take those best practice guidelines, and that's how they use those to define what is considered necessary and a covered service under your insurance. Now, when you call the insurance company and say, hey, do you cover these services? Yeah, we cover everything you mentioned. And they will say, yeah, we cover everything. Just send it in and we'll pay it, right? Like there's nothing to it if your doctor just submits it. However, it's this thing called medical necessity. And guess whose burden that is to decide what is and what is not medically necessary? Guess. It's your doctor's burden. And guess how the insurance company uses that? They say, these are the guidelines, you follow the guidelines. If you don't follow the guidelines, when we come back and look at your records and audit you, if you ordered testing that we paid for and it was not considered medically necessary according to these guidelines, then we are going to ask for that money back. And if you've done it enough, we may look at that as criminal. Okay? So when you ask your doctor to order tests for you and they're hesitant, you have to understand that the stresses that are placed upon them are unbelievable. That's why I do not participate in that anymore, because it's not that system wouldn't work. If that system accepted, this approach to healthcare and had guidelines established for that, okay, be different. But it doesn't. So it considers all of it not medically necessary, which means you can order it and they will pay for it. But guess what? They paid for something that you submitted and you shouldn't have. You could sit there and submit, so to an insurance company, you could submit something all day to an insurance company and they pay it all day. But they're going to want to know if what you billed to them was necessary medically. And if not, then you as the doctor were responsible for determining that was not that should not have been billed. And you therefore are responsible for that. That's right. Don't you like how that works? And then when you as the patient, you call and you ask the insurance company, well, is this covered? Sure, honey, everything's covered, right? All your doctor has to do is submit it. Not so fast. Why don't you tell the patient, which a lot of the insurance reps don't know this, I truly believe that. Why don't you explain to the patient that as long as it's medically necessary, and medically necessary means it's covered or not, and that's according to our best practice guidelines that your doctor is responsible for. So I can tell you that we will pay for it as long as it's medically necessary and follows our best practice guidelines, because they make it seem like it's not their fault if they don't pay for it, that it's your fault, your doctor's fault, because your doctor's just not billing it correctly. Just because you submit something to an insurance company does not mean that, and they pay it, does not mean that you did the right thing. A lot of fraud is committed that way. So you have to understand that when your doctors say no, or they're not open to anything that you have, it's because it's not you, but it's that they've got 10 minutes to talk to you, which is dictated not by their preference in a lot of cases. A lot of them are owned by hospital systems and big networks, right? These networks, that doctor's now an employee. That doctor has a production quota, and that doctor has to get to work, or they lose their job. Okay, so let me tell you, you're dealing with a completely different animal than the doctor that used to carry the bag around from door to door. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's no more long appointments. If there are, it's very rare, and it's tricky, right? So that's why I have to do things outside of that model so that I can practice how I think is more fit, and I'm not constantly under that scrutiny, which doesn't understand this system of healthcare, right? And it's getting better, but we're not there yet. So you guys have to be informed. You guys have to be advocates. You have to demand it. You have to say, hey, I want this type of healthcare. I want coverage. And here's the real deal. If we could help someone for a few $1,000s, let's say it's even $5,000, that we work them up. Let's say it's $10,000. Let's say we work them up and it's all their food and it's all their nutritional supplementation for 3 months. And they're compliant. They change diet because it's all there, right? They've got the food, they've got supplementation, they can we can do the testing that's needed. And let's say it's $10,000, right? That sounds like a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money to a lot of people. But consider this. What does the what does our healthcare system tell us right now that it costs per diabetic patient from their diagnosis date until they pass away? How much? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's an astronomical number, far beyond $10,000. So what if, when we're talking about this debt, this burden that we have, that diabetes is going to bankrupt us, Alzheimer's, which, a lot of these degenerative conditions, inflammatory, they have similar drivers of the process. We can investigate these things. We can help people maximize their health instead of just trying to give them medications that are thousands of dollars, that drain the system, that ruin their quality of life, that do a lot of things. And I'm lumping a lot of stuff together. There's a ton of good medications. There's a lot of good things out there that can help you, but I want you to know that the perspective is off. So when we compare this conventional versus this medical model, you've got to understand what you're dealing with. So I want to explain that to you guys because I think it's really important that you understand how everything works. Right? It's not a great system right now, and a lot of people don't get access to care that need access to this type of care. So that's why I'm trying to teach you guys. So please share these messages and these things that I'm teaching you, because it will apply to so many people. And I'm going to keep doing it as much as I can, sharing my message, trying to teach and empower you guys to be your own advocates so that you can be better partners with your doctor. Not adversaries, but better partners. And sometimes that means you have to find another doctor. And if that is it, so be it. Find someone that you can work with. But just know, just because you want a test, just because you call your insurance company and they say it's covered, no worries, they're not being upfront with you. Is it medically necessary? One, which they don't tell you that because that's a doctor's job, right? And then, does it follow their best practice guidelines? And so that's why you're met with so much resistance. So anyway, I want to share that with you guys. I went a long time today, but I really appreciate you. If you have any questions, comments, post them below. Share this if you don't mind. Share it with people. And what I'll do is I'll talk to you guys hopefully tomorrow morning. Okay. And I'm trying to do 3 of these per week in the month of September. So hopefully tomorrow morning I'll be able to share some more information with you guys. And but I really appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me tonight. If you guys have any questions or need anything, post them below, and my staff and everybody will try to answer. Okay. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thanks.